Well, good morning a second time, or third time, I think third time. Great to see you all, great to be here, great to have life, great that spring is here, great that Charles is here. You ushered in sunshine automatically, Charles. It's just a great day. We've been talking about this cycle of loving your neighbors. It's the second greatest commandment, to love your neighbors as yourself. And that means to get into the lives of our neighbors and to treat them the way that we would expect to be treated. And then opening up the Word and teaching them who God is. Moving people to loving God, which is the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to move one another towards serving others. Constantly throughout the Gospels and the book of Acts and all of Paul's letters and essentially all of the Bible, we find people moving each other towards works. Not that the works is what saves us. In fact, Paul is very clear about that. It's not the works that we do that saves us. We can't work our way into heaven. However, we were created for good works, and faith without works is dead. You can't say that you have faith, and yet you don't do things to serve other people. I love that we are a serving congregation. I think that's why we have health and vibrance and excitement. It's because we take pride in serving other people. I love that about this congregation. And then, of course, we move back to loving your neighbors, and you repeat that cycle. Our theme this year is the giving heart, a journey to radical love. And our theme verses come from 2 Corinthians 9, 7 through 8. And it says this: each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. I don't know about you, but I want to abound in the good works that happen in my life. I don't want to have a deficit. I don't want to be struggling. I don't want to say, did I do enough? I want to abound in every single good work that I do. And we have, according to Paul here, the formula to make that happen. Today is what's celebrated across the world as Palm Sunday. It's the Sunday before Easter. And it's Palm Sunday because of the story of the triumphal entry. It's when Jesus goes into Jerusalem and he's riding, as Cameron just read for us from Zechariah, he rides on a donkey. And as he's riding on this donkey, people are laying palm leaves down in front of the donkey for the whole path as Jesus enters into Jerusalem. What's interesting is I chose the one passage in all of the Gospels that doesn't mention palms at all. And I'll talk about that. I'll talk about why Luke doesn't mention them. Instead, he has them laying their cloaks on the ground in front of Jesus. But again, this was prophesied hundreds of years before Jesus. Before he even came to earth, Zechariah actually said quite a few things about what were fulfilled through Jesus, but specifically, he talks about this coming king who's coming into Zion. Zion is the kind of the nickname for Jerusalem. Zion is a city on a hill. It's a beacon. It's a place where people look to, and they anticipated this king who was going to come and rescue them. Now, the Jewish people were a little bit confused on this. I don't blame them. But they pictured an earthly king who was going to come and rescue them from all the years and years of oppression. You see, the Jewish people had experienced a lot of heartache over the years. The temple had been destroyed essentially twice and been rebuilt before the time of Jesus. One time it was a complete destruction, absolute, utter, and total destruction. That was in 586 BC, the temple was brought to complete destruction. The north fell in 722 BC. The south, with Jerusalem as the capital, fell in 586 BC. And when the Babylonians came in and they destroyed Jerusalem, they destroyed the temple with it. I mean, utterly destroyed it. Now, to give you a little bit of perspective for this, the temple was made of these massive stones, and I mean massive. 80 tons per stone, stacked on top of each other and just huge and massive. They did exactly this much cutting on the site of the temple. Everything was cut, quarried, finished, all of that stuff. These stones were finished miles from where the temple was, and these stones were, I call them stones, these massive rocks were floated and then drug up to the Temple Mount, and they were stacked on top of each other. To this day, we're not really sure how they did it. Scientifically, we're not sure how they physically lifted these stones and hoisted them one on top of each other. It was massive. The Babylonians destroyed it pretty much to where absolutely nothing was left. It's just a bunch of rubble. It's still there to this day. A lot of that rubble sits on top of that. But the temple was rebuilt on top of that. And they had years and years of oppression and people coming in and other nations just constantly being a headache and a nightmare to them. And part of that is because they weren't really faithful to God when God said, when I bring you into this land, this promised land, you need to wipe out everything and everyone. You get a clean slate, or else these people are going to integrate with you and they're going to be a constant source of nightmare. And in fact, we find out pretty quickly in the Old Testament that that was the case. And so they were waiting for this time. They were anticipating a period of peace. And in order for that to happen, they had to have a couple of different things happen all simultaneously. One was to have a powerful king who was going to come and just annihilate all these other nations who were a constant nuisance to the Israelites. But they also needed somebody who was going to be peaceful. And they were waiting and waiting and waiting. So Zechariah prophesies about this. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. A couple things about this. One is he's describing here, Zechariah is describing an animal that would have been used for sacrifice. This is a young animal. It was never sat on before. It was never mounted. It was young. It was perfect. It was spotless. And animals, it kind of represents an animal that would have been presented as one without blemish. There's a lot more to unpack here, but we're going to do that as we look into Luke's version of this story. It's kind of an interesting rendering. The one thing about this painting, which is hundreds of years old, is there's a book. I don't think in the first century they were carrying books around like that, but it's kind of interesting. Here's Luke's account. When he had said these things, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he drew near to Bethphage and Bethany, at the mount that is called Olivet, this is known as the Mount of Olives. It's where Jesus prayed. Right before Jesus was arrested, he's in the Mount of Olives, and he's weeping. And Luke, I believe, is the one who records that his blood or his sweat became like droplets of blood. Like he was anxious, he was worried, he was praying. He kept waking up his disciples saying, pray so that you don't fall into temptation. This was on the Mount of Olives. About a week after this event that we're reading about right now. So he said to two of his disciples, go into the village in front of you, where on entering you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever yet sat. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, why are you untying it? You shall say this: the Lord has need of it. So those who were sent went away and found it just as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, why are you untying the colt? And they said, the Lord has need of it. And they brought it to Jesus, and throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. This is the divergence where Luke records this, but Matthew and Mark record that people laid palms on the road, palm branches in front of Jesus. And as he was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." You know that saying, peace in heaven and glory in the highest? It's only found in the Gospel of Luke, but this isn't the first time. I don't know if any of you recognize that saying, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. It's verbatim what the angels said when they descended in the field in the middle of the night to the shepherds and they were announcing the birth of Jesus. It's the exact phrase that they said. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Luke is very clearly drawing a reference back to that holy announcement of Jesus. The angels are announcing the birth of the Messiah, and now the people are repeating what the angels said. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd, I can't wait. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." We were talking about this in class this morning. The Pharisees were traditionally known as being the people who wanted to catch Jesus doing something wrong. They were the naysayers, the anti-everything. You ever meet anybody who's anti-everything? Everything good? Not anti-bad things. They're anti, everything good. They'll find something to poo-poo the idea and be like, nope, that's stupid, that's ridiculous. And they burn good things to the ground. That was the Pharisees. Here people are praising Jesus. They're clearly living out Zechariah 9:9, which the Pharisees knew the scriptures. They knew Zechariah 9:9. The people are very clearly mimicking what happened to Zechariah 9:9. That had to have come to mind for them. And the Pharisees say, "Rebuke your disciples." He answered, "I tell you, if these," meaning his followers, "if they were silent, the very stones would cry out." This is a cosmic remembrance back to a lot of the Psalms that say the earth cries out. The heavens and the earth, they sing, they praise God. They give praise. I've talked about this before, but it's one of the coolest. I wish I would have looked it up before today because I don't remember the name of it. It's this comet that has a really weird, long, fancy scientific name. But scientists decided they were going to do something really interesting, and you can look this up on YouTube. It's so cool. This happened years ago, but they decided they were going to land, it was like some rover on this comet, and it had a microphone, and they wanted to record and see, are there actually any sounds in space? Because there's not supposed to be. There aren't supposed to be sounds in space. You can actually go and listen to the sounds of the sun. It's incredible. It's eerie, and it's cool, and it's incredible, and it's just fascinating. But the sun makes, essentially, music. It's violent music, but it's music. So they land this microphone on they kind of zero in on it, and they landed on this comet, expecting to not really hear anything. And it is the most beautiful, fascinating thing that you'll ever listen to. It's literally singing and making audible music. And so the Psalms that talk about the rocks singing and creation singing, the heavens singing and the earth singing, giving praise to God. Scientifically, we have evidence that this really happens. And it shouldn't surprise us as Christians, but it's really, really interesting. So Jesus said, even if my disciples were quiet, in other words, this is going to happen. This is God's will. Zechariah prophesied about it. The other prophets prophesied about it. This will happen. And even if I silenced my disciples, this is going to happen. The rocks would cry out. The stones would cry out. They would answer. Oh, that's the end of the scripture. So a few things about this. One is the location geographically. The Mount of Olives and Bethany and Bethphage, they're significant because also in Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 4, it prophesies that the Lord's feet would stand on the Mount of Olives on the day of victory. That's so cool, seeing these scriptures play out. And I don't know if you guys appreciate how cool it is when you see scriptures being fulfilled and all these different things pointing to Jesus throughout the entire scriptures. I mean, literally, if you read the Bible from cover to cover, you'll read so many scriptures that you're like, my goodness, like Jesus is in hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of verses all throughout the Old Testament before he ever walked the earth. He's present in the scriptures. And I guess a similarity for me, and I'm just like a connections kind of guy, I love the connection to people and how interesting and bizarre and weird and ironic all of it is. But, there's the whole 6 degrees of separation. Within 6 degrees, you should be able to find somebody, anybody in the world. You could drop a pin and say, I will eventually find somebody who knows that person personally. And it's very true. And so the scientific theory is if you go essentially through 6 people, it's the 6 degrees of separation, I think is how it works out. But if you go through the right 6 people, you'll get directly to the source of anybody. From the guy in the village in Ghana to the President of the United States to whoever it is. There's 6 degrees of separation. And I've found this in my life to be extremely true. And I think I've mentioned this before. I think it's less than 6 degrees. In my case, it's usually a little bit less than that. But you can get direct access to virtually anybody in the world. And it's so cool to see how those connections work. And they don't work in the way that you think they would work. So it's just like kind of at first you're throwing an arrow and hoping it sticks somewhere, but then you find that person and you're like, you just start asking the right questions, and before you know it, you could get the phone number or the exact location of somebody who knows that person personally. It's really cool. And so for me, this is how all these scriptures work, and they connect in ways that you would never guess and you would never imagine it. But Luke is brilliantly connecting all of these scriptures and bringing them together without us as the reader. It's not that obvious, but then you start digging and you're like, I see what Luke is doing. And it's really, really cool. The whole red carpet thing, the royal procession. People spread their cloaks on the road. In the Old Testament, in 2 Kings chapter 9 and verse 13, that was the very specific gesture used to announce a new king of Israel. You would lay your cloaks on the road in front, and they would march them through the city, and it was this big celebration and big announcement. The song of the disciples in verses 37 through 38. Again, there's the messianic shout, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." They're quoting directly from Psalm 118, verse 26. That's known as the Hallel. And the Jewish people would sing that pretty often. Traditionally, it was sung by pilgrims who were entering. As they would enter into Jerusalem, they would sing Psalm 118, 26. They're singing it here in verses 37 through 38. And then, of course, the Lucan connection, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. He's quoting his own book from Luke chapter 2 and verse 14 when the angels announce the coming of the Messiah. And then, of course, the silent rocks, they would cry out. Over and over, we find the scripture saying that the heavens and the earth sing praise and they give way to the Lord. It's very cool. And as we celebrate this week, we're going into Easter, and of course, as Jesus is led into Jerusalem, he's arrested, he dies, but that's not the end of the story. And for us Christians, we know that it was that death and that blood that Jesus shed that grants us our forgiveness. And the resurrection is directly linked to our salvation and our baptism and the afterlife and all of those things. It's all connected together. So this week we reflect on that, and as Christians do all around the world. And next week we're going to celebrate the resurrection of Christ and what that means. What does it mean to live a new life? That's what Paul says in Romans 6. You're raised up to live a new life. What does that mean as a Christian? The resurrection is absolutely incredible. And so next week we're going to invite all of you. Come a little bit early. Come at 10 o'clock. Eat food with us. We're going to eat. We're going to celebrate. It's just going to be a big, fun day of celebration. And we have a lot of good food already I saw on the sign-up list. And I hope we get 100% participation. It's going to be a great, great time next Sunday. If there's anybody today who's not yet taken the step to put Christ on in baptism, and you're ready for that, or if you have prayer needs, we'd encourage you to come up. We'll pray over you, whatever you need, as we all stand and sing this song together. Jared?